Welcome everyone to the Working Outdoors Safely webinar. Today's speakers are Dr. Catherine Clements, who is our Ecology and Natural Resources Educator, and Karen Geis, our Volunteer Coordinator and Community Liaison. Thank you both for joining us today, and I will let you guys take it away from here.
Thank you, Cassidy. So I want to share a little bit about IFAS Extension Sarasota County in case there are people that are not familiar with what we do here. The Extension Office is a partnership between the county that you're in, because all 67 counties in the state of Florida do have an Extension Office, and there are Extension offices associated with all land grant universities throughout our country. So here in Sarasota County, it is a partnership between Sarasota County, the University of Florida, and the USDA. And basically what we do is we share the research done by the researchers up at the university with our community to help create solutions for problems that our communities may be having. We are an educational facility, and as you can see on your screen, we have quite a vibrant extension office here in Sarasota County with lots of different core area programs. So we have agriculture, natural resources, as well as community development, nutrition and healthy living, gardening, and 4-H youth development. So we are available to assist you. Currently, right now, we are trying to assist people mostly through virtual means. So please feel free to call our office or email us if you have questions or need assistance in any of these areas. We also have a lot of free or low-cost webinars that we are doing online, just like the one you're in currently, to provide information to our community. Here are some of the programs that we are involved with. So for this particular webinar, we may have master gardeners with us on this webinar, and we may have master naturalists, so up there in the upper right-hand corner. But there's lots of different things we do if you want to become more involved with some of the programs here at our office. So that's a little bit about what we do here at our IFAS Extension in Sarasota County. And I'm going to turn it over to Karen, who once again is our volunteer coordinator here at the office.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you everyone for attending today. And I'm just going to start in with our topics we're covering today. Weather, lightning, tornadoes, and flooding are heat-related, illness issues, and sunburn. Some of our creepy crawly critters, ants, spiders, bees, wasps, snakes, animals, plants, and some hearing and back safety. Next slide. So lightning is a serious issue down in Florida, and just want you to really think about this seriously when you're out there, whether you're doing your own personal things, you're gardening, you're working on your job, at the beach. This really plays in throughout the year, and just get that sense that when you're doing this, you want to start counting when you hear lightning, and if you hear thunder within 30 seconds, lightning is within 6 miles away from you, and you really need to go inside and get under some shelter. And then really, after the last lightning bolt you've heard, you want to wait at least 30 minutes before returning to an outdoor activity. If you are outside and someone around you is struck by lightning, this is a 911 situation, and you want to call 911 as soon as possible. If you are CPR certified, you do want to start CPR if it's safe to do so in the area. But really remember, CPR saves lives. Over here, you're going to see some safe areas that you really can be if you are caught or you're outside and the conditions start to kind of get bad on you. You really can go get in a fully enclosed vehicles with the windows closed, low ground, or in some kind of substantial structure. What you really want to avoid is being around any outdoors with any metal objects around you, out in an open field or on high ground. by any single or solitary trees and by water. So really, this is a very serious thing down here, and just heed these kind of warnings. And there's always another day to get your work done. And obviously, if you're out there working on your job, just kind of take those precautions and get in a vehicle or get back to a structure. So tornadoes. Any time of the year we can have a tornado, every location in the United States. No, we are not the Midwest, but we do get tornadoes here. We tend to get tornadoes that are more, if you look at the chart down here, EF 0 through 2. They are not as strong, obviously, as your biggest EF 4 and 5s. But if you really want to put this into perspective, look at that. The 1 and 2, EF 1 and 2 tornado are equivalent in wind speed to a category 2 or 3 hurricane. Obviously, none of this is to be not taken seriously. So really, you need to kind of, in the summer, really watch on that any time of year. But, with a hurricane, you have more time to prepare. You don't have time to prepare. Keeping alerts on your phone, weather radio in your office or home, and that kind of thing, keeping yourself aware of the weather conditions. What's safe? Obviously, interior room in a building with no windows. When you're outside, you want to find a sturdy structure, if possible, flat land, but don't go into an overpass or under a bridge. You want to avoid that. Really, and just it is looking around where you're at any given time, and knowing the structures you're around. If this were to come up, the building you're normally working in, say you're going outside and working around that building, but know where that safe room is in your vicinity or structure. Next slide. So flooding is most common natural disaster in the United States. We have very heavy rains in Florida and can have these kind of serious situations rather quickly. You never want to walk into flood water, as it can be contaminated or power lines could have fallen in it. You never want to drive into flood waters. If there's barricades put up, never go around them. Turn around, don't drown is kind of a good thing to say, but you really don't know if you're driving on a road that you think you know where everything is. Sewer covers could be have come off. You could be driving into a ditch and the whole lay of the land is different than what you think. The road could have collapsed in an area. You really don't want to drive into floodwaters at all. And it's just, you could get yourself into a really bad situation real quick. Know the areas in town that typically flood when we get heavy rains and avoid them. Do note, Catherine was reminding me about this when we were developing this, and this is kind of a creepy, scary, yucky thing, but red ants commonly form floating mats in flooded areas. And if you go into that water and you run into one of these things or it floats by you, you're suddenly going to have a lot of, could be hundreds of ants on you and quickly biting you. And again, another really bad situation you just want to avoid. This chart over here says a lot about not going into water and what water can do and the force of water. 6 inches of fast moving water can knock you off your feet and carry you away. 12 inches can move a small car. 18 to 24 can move a truck. So, it's not just the flooded water, it is, deep moving water. Next slide. So I'm just going to start in a little bit about the heat related illness, and then Catherine will take over. But, we're in the depths of getting into summer here, and really got pretty started off quickly, and the heat really turned on. But understand when you're out there is the temperature 90 and above is considered extreme. And then you combine the humidity, and that's what we've been running into lately. It increases the feeling of the heat as measured in the heat index. Those, the temperature, the air temperature and the humidity combined really kind of give some conditions that can be overwhelming and kind of, really are a concern, and you have to, heed the caution with this. Wind involved, lack of or a lot of, can then affect the heat as well. And radiant heat coming off black pavement, and if you're working around a building or an air conditioning unit and it's venting off, or the building is venting off hot air, that wind, or you're being right next to it, increases the air temperature in that location. So it is another factor to consider when you're out working and looking at all these conditions. Next slide. So just some factors that might affect your ability to handle the heat outside. Everything I've just said, you got all these heat conditions and your heat index and your air temperature and all those things around you. But have you been out of the area for a while? Say you're coming back to Florida at a certain part of the year, and you've been up in a climate where in another state where it's quite a bit cooler, okay? So you may need several days, 3 to 5 days, to adjust to the heat in Florida. Alcohol and caffeine dehydrate the body, so that can have an effect on your ability to handle the heat outside. Your age, older, younger, a little bit more risk going there for you. The kind of clothing you have, you should be wearing loose, lightweight, and light colored clothing. Diet, are you maybe on a low salt diet? You're going to hear in a second how the salt and different things can affect you. Your actual physical fitness. Medical conditions you may have also affect this. Certain medications you take. And then the physical activity you're actually doing outside. Are you sitting kind of still, maybe weeding, or doing something kind of, you're not moving around a lot, not real active. But if you're putting down mulch, you're moving heavy plants around, moving a wheelbarrow around with rock in it, your activity is a lot higher, a lot more strenuous. So just going to affect you more. Just your weight and might have some effects on you as well. Next slide.
All right, so I think I'm going to take over from here. So we're going to talk about the different types of heat-related illnesses, and these are the 3 types that we're going to talk about, and they get increasingly more concerning. So let's talk about heat cramps first. And some of us may have experienced these living down here in Florida. So symptoms of heat cramps are usually the symptom you're most commonly going to get is some type of muscle pain or spasm. And you could get spasms in your stomach and actually feel it in your abdomen, or you can get the spasms in your arms or legs. This is due to an imbalance in electrolytes to fluid volume causing the cramping. So as we sweat, we lose our electrolytes, which are things like magnesium, calcium, sodium, that are in our bloodstream. And if we sweat too much and we don't replace those electrolytes through an electrolyte containing beverage or certain foods, then we have an imbalance in electrolytes compared to the fluid volume in our bloodstream. And this is what causes our muscles to cramp up, which can be very mild and all the way to very extreme. So here are some of the things you can do if somebody is experiencing heat cramps. You want to move them to a cooler place. And this really speaks to watching out for others, especially if you are working outdoors for an agency or volunteering outdoors and you're working with others or you're working with someone from that agency. We all need to be sort of watching out for each other, especially in the heat of our Florida those summers. So if you're noticing that people are suffering from any of these things that we're going to talk about, you want to get them, especially with the heat-related illnesses, into a cooler place as soon as possible. For heat cramps, if they can drink some type of electrolyte beverage, that's going to be better than just drinking plain water. Water is still important for hydration, but water alone does not replace electrolytes. So some type of sport electrolyte drink would be really important, even something like juice, because juice is going to provide some sugars, but something that has the calcium, magnesium, and sodium is going to be most helpful. And then you definitely want to wait for the cramps to go away before returning to whatever activity you were doing. And honestly, if you can, as Karen's mentioned already, there's always another day. So this is a stressor for your body, and you may be more susceptible if you do go right back outdoors. You may be more susceptible to getting the cramps or even more severe heat-related illnesses if you go back outdoors right away. So you may just want to wait until tomorrow to continue with the activity. If these muscle and heat cramps last longer than an hour, you should consider getting medical attention at that point. Some of the things you can do besides an electrolyte beverage to decrease these symptoms, you can eat something like a banana that has potassium in it, which is another electrolyte. You can eat a handful of like salted nuts, because salt is an electrolyte and it helps us retain water. And that's sometimes why we avoid salt in our diets, because it can be more healthy to not eat a lot of salt. But in the summer months when we are perspiring a lot, salt can help us retain a little bit of our electrolytes and fluid. All right, heat exhaustion is sort of the next level of seriousness in terms of heat-related illnesses. So we're going to see some increases in symptoms as well. So if somebody is suffering from heat exhaustion, they're going to often have a lot of sweating happening. They may be looking pale at this point. They may still be experiencing muscle cramps, and they're going to start to potentially feel weak. They might also have a headache, and that may even progress to fainting. They can also feel nauseous and may even start to vomit. So you can see there's a range of symptoms and more symptoms that we will see when somebody starts experiencing heat exhaustion. So if someone is feeling this way, we want to once again get them into a cooler place. We want to get them under a tree that has shade, or preferably into a situation where there's air conditioning. We want them to loosen their clothing, and we want to try to lower their body temperature, because once you get into this state of heat exhaustion, your body is not lowering its temperature appropriately. It's trying to by heavy sweating. Sweating or perspiration is the #1 way that our body tries to manage our core body temperature and tries to release heat. But if somebody is at this point where they're sweating very heavily, their body's trying the best it can to release the heat and keep their core temperature at a normal level, but is struggling at this point. So we can help their body along by putting cool cloths on the places on the body that have a lot of vascularity, which is just blood flow. So if you think about what has a lot of blood flow in our bodies, it's the back of our neck, it's our wrists, it's under our arms, our forehead, or in really serious circumstances, also our genital or private areas also have a lot of blood flow. So even putting a cool ice pack over their clothes in that area can be helpful too. So just a cool cloth or even an ice pack on those places that have a lot of blood flow, it will cool down the blood as it flows through those areas. And then once again, some type of rehydration electrolyte beverage would be helpful. And if their symptoms worsen or last longer than an hour, this is also a condition that you would want to seek medical attention for if they are getting worse or not getting better in a reasonable amount of time. So here's our most concerning heat-related illness. This one is heat stroke. So usually you would see a progression through these 3 different levels, although once again, it's going to depend on the person and all those different conditions that Karen talked about at the beginning in terms of how quickly they might progress into heat stroke. If somebody is sensitive or has conditions that are going to make them more sensitive to heat, this could occur quicker than you might otherwise think. So symptoms are going to look a little bit different for someone that is suffering from heat stroke. What heat stroke is basically their core body temperature is 103 degrees or above that. And our bodies don't do really well with that. Our thermal max is really 107.6 degrees. So that's where our bodies really max out in being able to at all handle that type of core temperature. We don't do well when we get to 103 or above. So if you think about a fever, most of us as adults feel horrible if our fever is 102 or above. So heat stroke is going to be as we creep into those higher core body temperatures. And what you're going to see for someone that is in heat stroke is they are going to be red. They're not going to be pale now. They're going to be red, like almost cherry red. Their skin is going to be hot and it's going to be very dry, because here's the problem now. Their body is no longer able to cope with the normal mechanism of perspiration. So they are not going to be sweating anymore. So they are not capable of releasing their heat and lowering their own core body temperature, which is why this is such a serious situation. They're going to have changes in their heartbeat, so that their pulse is going to be very rapid. They are potentially going to have mental changes as well. They are going to be dizzy, confused. They might even have changes in their personality where they might be becoming very irritable. And then it can even progress into hallucinations and passing out. They may also have nausea and vomiting as well if they are suffering from heat stroke. So this is a 911 situation. So as we progress out of heat exhaustion into heat stroke, we're no longer at a situation where moving them to a cool place and lowering their body temperature with the cool packs or the ice packs is enough. You still want to do that, but you want to call 911, get 911 on the way, and then get the person into a cooler situation. And if you have a cool washcloth or ice packs, apply them to those places where they would be having a lot of blood flow. You also can spray them, like just mist them with some cool water. You can fan them, anything that's going to assist their body to release some of that heat, because they're not doing it through perspiration. You do not want to give someone something to drink at this point, because their body mechanisms are not working correctly. So giving them something to drink when they are actually in heat stroke is going to make the situation worse. So here's some of the things that we've mentioned that can prevent heat-related illnesses, because it's best if we don't even get there, if we don't even start down that path. So here are some of the things you can do ahead of time to try to prevent that. So you definitely want to be hydrated. And we all know this, but I bet you we also all forget to stay well hydrated. So you want to drink lots of water prior to working outdoors. I often say that by the time you're thirsty, it's too late. You really want to get ahead of your thirst. And if you know you're going to be working outdoors tomorrow, drink a decent amount of liquids today. So even 24 hours in advance can be helpful, as well as definitely the few hours before you go outside. Once again, you might want to not just drink water, but also drink a sports or electrolyte drink that's going to replace or keep those electrolytes balanced in your system. As I mentioned, you can also maintain the electrolyte balance by eating salted nuts or bananas. You want to take breaks. So if you're like some of us on this call and you're type A and you're very task oriented and you just want to get your job done, that's really a great characteristic to have in your personality, but we don't want you to overwork yourself or get into one of these situations. So take breaks, especially on those really hot sunny days. Also think about the time of day. Could you maybe work outside earlier in the day or later in the day when you're not in the direct sun? And that's going to help avoid some of this heat. And watch out for others. Help keep everybody safe that's outside with you. Karen?
So just remember to put sunscreen on before you head out, at least SPF 15, and then reapply. Obviously, you're going to be sweating out in these conditions, so reapply as you work along. Remember again, should wear loose, lightweight, colored clothing and a hat. Wear sunglasses to protect your eyes from the UV rays. You know, if you're out there doing stuff and working and things could come up and hit your eyes too, you can get safety glasses with the UV tint, and also get regular glasses that have like some additional safety features and to protect your eyes and UV and anti, resistant to the something hitting your eyes. So just kind of consider all these things in as well as you're working outside.
Okay, so I'm going to continue on and talk to you guys a little bit about some of the things you might find out there in the environment that are sharing your area with you that you might want to try to avoid. So let's first talk about some insects and some spiders. So we have a lovely picture up there of a black widow spider. And black widows are found in this area, so that is something to consider. I have actually come across them multiple times where I live in Sarasota County. And so, of course, they're going to be a black spider. They have a very large abdomen with a red hourglass on them, as you can see in this picture, but you aren't always going to see that red hourglass. It's not like you're going to move the spider around to make sure that it has that red hourglass on it. So I would recommend just avoiding any black spider that you see that has a very round, the ones I've seen, their abdomen is actually larger and rounder than this picture even. So the abdomen is this part of the body right here. So very round, large abdomen and black, just avoid it or shoo it away. That black widows do like to be sometimes around our human habitation. So I found one once in my carport making a web and putting its egg case in this like car shade that I had left in my carport. I've also found them behind doors and in the house and in the bathroom. So it's not super common, so I don't want anyone to leave here being very afraid that there's a black widow lurking for them somewhere in their house or carport, but it is a possibility. The other insect or the other spider that people often ask me about is the brown recluse. Brown recluses actually do not live here in this area, so it would be highly unlikely that you would come across a brown recluse. Our black widow spiders also like living in wood piles and rock pilers and even sprinkler boxes. So those are some of the places you might find them outdoors or in your garages and sheds, or like I said, carports. So just watch where you're putting your hands in some of these areas, because also these are similar areas that you might find a snake as well. So just you could wear gloves, but also watch where you're putting your hands. We're all very familiar, those of us that work outdoors here in Florida, very familiar with fire ants. So just watch where you're standing, where you're walking. If you're kneeling down to weed, watch where you kneel down before you spend any time there. Different people can be more susceptible to fire ants than others. I know for me, they don't bother me as much, and other people can have a very strong what we call histamine reaction to them, where they really swell up, they're incredibly painful. So you want to try to avoid them if possible. Wasps and bees also love living down here in Florida, and they're very important to our ecosystem. So we want to try to live with them as opposed to trying to get rid of them. But you can avoid contact with them by avoiding heavy perfumes that might bring them towards you. They actually do like bright color clothing and shiny jewelry, so you can minimize that when you're outside. If you were in a situation where you were near a swarm of wasps or bees, you don't want to move quickly because they can become more aggressive and chase you. So you want to move away slowly. And, you know, human nature, of course, might be to run or to swat at them. But that will just aggravate them more. So you want to move away slowly and try to get out of their area, try to get somewhere safe, like indoors, into your car or something like that. And then I like to bring up the pus caterpillar, which is the picture down here at the bottom, because they are here in Sarasota County. This is one of our venomous caterpillars. So all of these little, it looks very cute. It looks all furry, and honestly, if I was outdoors, I would want to maybe touch this caterpillar. It looks like we should pet it, but this is the last caterpillar that we should touch or pet. So all of that sweet little looking fur actually has chemicals that inject into your skin if you are to touch the pus caterpillar that will cause a very painful stinging reaction. Once again, just like with all of these other species on the slide, some people are more sensitive to pus caterpillars than others, and people do end up going to the hospital because of the pain and swelling that can be caused when they actually come in contact with the pus caterpillar. They live in oak trees and elm trees. So those are sort of the vegetation where they're more likely to be found. They also, when they're young, can look a little bit more like a fluffy cotton ball. They can be more white and sort of fluffy in appearance. So those are some of the things to look for. I know Karen, do you want to share quickly your personal experience with the pus caterpillar?
Yes, I had just, I'm actually very tall, so I was ducking under an oak tree some years ago, and my ear brushed against one of these. I had no idea it was there, and then saw it afterwards, what it was, and it was just, I had to go to the emergency room. I had quite the reaction, and it was just excruciatingly painful where it had, and then I tried to brush whatever I felt was hurting my ear, and it got me on my fingers too, so it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, so keep a lookout for these guys, and certainly different parts of your body are more likely to be more sensitive to others when we come in contact with something like a pus caterpillar or we get stung by a bee. So anything obviously around our face, our ears, can be a lot more sensitive of an area to come in contact with these insects. All right, so let's talk about venomous snakes. So not everybody loves snakes. I actually love snakes. And once again, I like to just remind everybody that even some of these critters that we're not super fond of personally are really important to our ecosystem. They have a variety of services that they actually do for not only our natural environment, but often for us humans too. Like if we didn't have snakes, we might be overrun by rats and other rodents. So that's one of the things that people really like about snakes is they do keep our rodent populations under control. We have about 46 different species of snakes that are native to Florida. Not all of them exist here in Sarasota County. Probably at least half or a little bit less, I would say, are native here in Sarasota County. And then in our area, in all of Florida, let me say that first. In all of Florida, out of those 46 snakes, only 6 of them are venomous. And then only 4 of the venomous snakes are actually found in our area. So we're just going to cover those quickly so that you're familiar with them. So the coral snake is up there on the top right. And this one is very bright. It's often a relatively small snake. I'd say the largest one I've ever seen is about 18 inches long, and they're very skinny. So 18 inches may seem big to you, but some of these snakes get a lot bigger than that. So the coral snakes tend to be skinny. They are not what we call a pit viper, which is what the other venomous snakes are that I'm going to talk about. So the coral snake's head is not diamond or not triangular shaped like our pit viper venomous snakes are. So you can't just look at the head shape to figure out if it's venomous. With the coral snake, it's really about the patterning of these bright colors. And one of the sayings that we say is if red touches yellow, it can kill a fellow. So as you can see here, the red is touching the yellow pattern. This is an indication that it's a coral snake and it's venomous. Down here on the bottom right is another native snake to this area, which also has a red, black, and yellow pattern. But notice red does not touch yellow in this snake, it touches black. So I always say that if you see a venomous snake, you're not going to remember this little saying. So if you see a snake that is red, black, and yellow, just avoid it or shoo it along its way with a broom or a rake or something like that. Or just avoid it. Just go inside and let it move out of the way before you go back to that area to work. Here's a pygmy rattlesnake down here. Pygmy rattlesnakes, we are not seeing as many of them. We're seeing a little bit of a population decline. You're going to find pygmy rattlesnakes more often in natural areas like pinelands and scrub areas. They are a smaller rattlesnake and they tend to be sort of grayish with the black and a little bit of rust sort of diamond pattern on them. So once again, our pygmy rattlesnakes are going to usually be closer to like 1.5 to 2 feet long. They are a pit viper, so the shape of their head will be a little bit more triangular due to the venom where the glands are located in their head. Once again, if you see a snake, you're probably not going to pay a ton of attention to the shape of their head, so you can just avoid all snakes and let them just go along their way, or if it looks a little bit like this snake, definitely just let it have its space. Here are our 2 other venomous snakes that are found in our area. Our eastern diamondback rattlesnake. I actually had a group out for a walk at one of our Sarasota County preserves in December. I think it might have been my last walk before COVID affected us all. And we actually came upon an eastern diamondback rattlesnake right in the middle of the trail we were walking on. I've also seen these in Oscar Shearer State Park, for instance, and they can get 6 to 7 feet long and can be as thick around as your arm. So these are big venomous snakes. We don't see them all that often. I feel lucky if I see 1 or 2 a year, and I spend a lot of time out in the natural areas. So the chances of you coming upon any of these venomous snakes is quite low, but we just want you to see them and be aware of what they look like. So our eastern diamondback rattlesnake also has those diamond-shaped patterns, although a little bit more brown and beige, whereas our pygmy rattlesnake is a little bit more black and grayish. Our cottonmouth or water moccasin is down there on the bottom. Those are going to be more likely found near freshwater areas. They tend to be a quite thick-bodied snake like our diamondback rattlesnake, but they don't get that long. They just tend to have a thick body. They can be aggressive. And there's also non-venomous snakes that can be found around the water that look really similar. Our banded water snake is non-venomous and can look similar to the cottonmouth. But once again, if you're not able to identify them in the moment, just stay away until it moves along. If you think you or someone you are with has been bitten by a venomous snake, you want to get medical attention immediately. If you can, try to get a picture of the snake without endangering yourself in any way. This is probably not something you're gonna be likely to do in the moment, but if it's possible, that allows the emergency personnel to better identify what snake the person's been bitten by. Because the snake's probably going to be long gone by the time your emergency personnel get there. So call 911, keep the person quiet with minimal movement to prevent the spread of venom through their system. If they've been bitten somewhere where they have constricting jewelry or footwear or clothing on, you want to remove that or loosen that so that as swelling occurs, they don't have, like if they get bitten on their hand and they have a ring on, try to get the ring off so that as the hand swells, it doesn't become a complication later. None of those things like snake bite kits or trying to suck the venom out or putting on a tourniquet, most of those things that we've learned about in the past either don't work or actually make the situation worse. So really you just want to keep them quiet, remove constrictive clothing or jewelry, and get 911 on the way. All right, let's talk about a few animals that are common here in Florida that we just want to be cautious around. Once again, I don't want to make these animals out to be bad guys because we love these animals. They're such an important part of our Florida experience, but there are, like with all things, just some cautions we want to take into account. So alligators. There are alligators in all 67 counties of Florida. They are a freshwater reptile, so they are going to be around. There are quite a lot of them in our county. They mate between April and May, so this is often when we hear about alligators in somebody's carport or at their front door, or we see them moving around more frequently than we normally would. That's because the boys are out there looking for the girls. They're looking around, trying to find a mate. Often this is still at the beginning of our wet season or the end of our dry season, so they might also be looking around for water at this point. They mate and then the female nests in June and July, and the females will very aggressively defend their nests. So if you're out kayaking or something like that, you want to stay away from any type of alligators, especially if they look like they're nesting. You want to keep children and pets and yourself, but the smaller humans and our pets are more at danger from alligators because they're about the size of something an alligator would normally prey on. So we want to keep children and pets at least 10 feet away from any water source. And you want to stay away from those freshwater sources, especially at night, because that's when alligators tend to be more active and tend to be feeding. These are ectothermic reptiles, meaning they are cold-blooded and they don't move around well when they're cold. When we see them on the banks of ponds and streams, it's because they're trying to warm up. If we're out kayaking and they jump into the water, they're not coming after you. They're actually more scared of you than you are of them. So just keep your distance. Bats, just never pick up a bat from the ground or handle a bat for any reason, even if you think it's dead. Bats are our #1 vector for carrying rabies here in Sarasota County. That being said, no, sorry, they are not our #1. I always make that mistake. Raccoons are our #1. Bats can carry rabies, but only 0.5% of bats actually carry rabies here in Florida. So they actually aren't a good vector for rabies, but it's possible. If a bat is on the ground, something is wrong with it. Don't pick it up. If it appears dead, it may be, but it may not be. So just never pick up a bat or handle it for any reason. And bobcats, people sometimes are concerned about bobcats, but really they are much smaller than most of us think they are when we see them at night and we're worried about them. They do tend to be active more at night, although they tend to be very secretive and skittish, but they're also cats. So any of you that have a cat for a pet know that cats also often will just sort of stand or sit there and look at you like they have some other thing going on in their world. And bobcats will do that too. I've seen a bobcat just plunk down in someone's driveway and just sit and stare at the person. They are rarely ever aggressive. They're just sometimes curious, and cats own the world. So they're just gonna sit there and own that patch of the driveway for a few minutes. Coyotes are getting more popular. We're seeing them more often in Sarasota County and other places in Florida. If you do come across a coyote, just once again, think about what pet dogs are like. Dogs tend to want to play. They tend to be very curious, and coyotes are like that too. So you don't want to run away from them because they'll just think you're playing with them and they might run after you, not because they're being aggressive, just because they're being a dog. So you want to stand tall, you want to yell at them, and you want to wave your arms and just make as much noise as possible. Yell at them, scream at them. You want them to retain their natural fear of human beings. If you are walking your own dog, then you want to, if it's a small dog, pick that dog up and have it close to your body so it doesn't seem like something a coyote might normally prey upon. If you have a large dog, stand in front of your large dog because the coyote might actually try to play with your larger dog, or your larger dog might actually become aggressive to the coyote. So put some separation in between. All right, panthers and bear we don't usually see in Sarasota County. We don't have a large enough green area for them to live here, but they might wander through our county. If you were ever to come across a panther or bear, what is recommended is that you do not turn your back to them or bend down. You want to stand up straight and once again make yourself appear as tall as possible. With panthers and bear, you want to maintain eye contact and then back away slowly while maintaining that eye contact. Never run away from these larger predators. And then raccoons, these are the most common vectors of rabies in Florida. So once again, raccoons live around people very easily. They might get into your garbage. There's all sorts of recommendations about how to not invite them into your yard. Like don't leave your garbage out, don't leave out pet food, pick up fallen fruit from fruit trees. But generally it's unlikely that a raccoon's gonna have rabies. If they do have rabies, they act very oddly, and that's when you would potentially want to call animal control. Okay, I'm getting near the end and then it'll go back to Karen, but let's look at a few plants first. Poison ivy is found all throughout the state of Florida and certainly all throughout Sarasota County. So leaves of 3, let it be, is a good thing to remember. If you're not sure how to identify it and you see a plant that has 3 leaves, just stay away from it, don't touch it. About 50 to 70% of us will develop some type of reaction if we come in contact with the oils in the leaf of the poison ivy. So not all of us react to it, but a number of us do, and it's just best not to even figure that out for yourself. Poison oak and poison sumac are found more in North and Central Florida and not here in Sarasota County. Also Brazilian pepper tree is in the same family as poison ivy, and so the sap or the juices from Brazilian pepper, if you are trying to remove that invasive plant, may cause a reaction as well, especially if you already know you react to poison ivy. If you burn these plants and inhale the smoke, you can actually get a very serious reaction in your respiratory tract, which may require hospitalization. So always be careful if you are having a campfire or burning some leftover wood, make sure you're not burning poison ivy along with it. If you become exposed to any of these plants, you want to clean your skin immediately. And you want to think about, have you gotten some of that oil from the leaves of the plant on your clothing or your shoes, or maybe even your dog when it was walking through the poison ivy? All of these things can be transferred to your skin and cause a reaction. So you not only want to clean your skin if you're exposed, but also get your clothes into the washing machine as well. Some people have a pretty serious reaction. So if the rash is on a large area of the body or is becoming really red and irritated, it may require some medical attention. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Karen.
So yeah, some hearing safety tips. Just remember, we're hearing protection for equipment that exceeds 85 decibels, or you could risk getting some potential hearing loss. So if you're running some kind of equipment and people around you have to kind of yell for you to hear them, it's loud enough for you be getting to that 85 decibel point. And look at all the things I've got listed here: blowers, chainsaws, hedge trimmers, lawnmowers, tractors, and weed eaters. Everything that's used outside exceeds that 85 decibels. So whether it's you're doing something around your own house, you're at work using this equipment, you really should use hearing protection to protect your hearing. Next slide. So some back safety techniques here and some information. You really, when you're out there doing some work outside and you know you're going to lift something heavy, you want to plant your feet about 12 inches apart. You want to bend at your knees when you're lifting, keep your back straight, hold those items closer to your body, and then pivot your feet as you're moving. You really want to kind of think about what you're lifting, where you're going to take it. You know, is it too heavy? Where are you actually, when you're taking that item, are you by some area of ground that maybe be uneven or drop off, or maybe have to move up some steps a little bit or something like that? Just, is that path difficult for you? Take all these things into consideration and use a wheelbarrow if you have one, or get one, and think about what you're going to be doing prior to doing this kind of work, and get somebody to help you. So just really think about paying attention to that terrain and walking carefully and kind of bringing all these things in as you're lifting heavy things to protect your back. Next slide. So just remember all these conditions and all these things we told you, the weather conditions and the heat and sun, that all these things combine together, and staying hydrated and taking those breaks and applying sunscreen and reapplying it as you're out there for a length of time, and wearing sunglasses and a hat, and wearing that loose fitting clothing and light colored, and look out for your critters that are around you and potentially some of those plants. And then your hearing and back safety as well. And just put all this together and to have yourself a safe time outside. Here are some things to, University of Florida has some wonderful write-ups on all these things we've talked about. They're called EDIS documents. And every one of these websites, we pulled information. You can get additional information: CDC, FEMA, NOAA, and ready.gov. Just some, a lot of information about a lot of things, safety things, all for all parts of your life, okay? Next slide. And I can't thank you enough for attending today. We all thank you. And our information is below for the extension office, a phone number, and email. And we do also have a survey, and maybe Catherine can talk a little bit more about this, and do see some maybe questions coming up. So we do have the survey in the chat. And anything else to add, Catherine?
No, I think we're great. So once again, thank you for attending the webinar today. You can click on the survey link in your chat box to complete. It's just, I believe, a 3-question survey. We also may have the same survey or a slightly longer one available for people that will be watching this in the future as a recording.